Welcome back, everyone, to the 21st Century Man podcast. You know we love diving deep into each chapter of the book, The 21st Century Man.
We do.
And today we are tackling chapter 21, which is all about boosting your immunity.
Very important chapter. Very timely, too.
Yes, always, but especially these days, right?
Everyone's thinking about immunity.
Yeah, so much good stuff in this chapter from Jerry Stein, the nutritionist, and Nancy Face, the health coach. We're going to try to pull out some of the best tips and insights for you today, and of course, encourage you to get the book and read the full chapter.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so right off the bat, the chapter lays out 4 core areas that are really foundational for a strong immune system. They are good nutrition, exercise, breathing, and meditation. Pretty holistic view. I like that.
I do, too. It's not just about popping pills. It's about taking care of your whole self, you know?
Exactly. And while we'll be focusing mostly on the nutrition and the more internal stuff in this deep dive, we wanted to at least mention those 4 pillars because they're all interconnected. It's all part of the picture.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's jump into those fundamental supplements that the chapter starts with. First up is a multivitamin, but not just any multivitamin.
Right. They're not all created equal. The authors really emphasize the importance of a high-quality multivitamin, one that's broad spectrum, meaning it has a wide range of vitamins and minerals.
Makes sense. So what exactly should we be looking for in a multivitamin? What are the key ingredients?
They specifically mention vitamins A, B complex, C, and then some trace minerals like copper, manganese, selenium, and zinc.
Okay, so why are those specific vitamins and minerals so important? What do they actually do for our immunity?
Well, each one plays a unique role. So vitamin A, for example, is essential for maintaining the health of our skin and mucous membranes. Those are the linings of our nose, throat, and other areas that are exposed to the outside world. They act as a barrier against those nasty pathogens.
Oh yeah, the first line of defense.
Exactly. And then the B complex vitamins are crucial for a ton of metabolic processes, the way our bodies convert food into energy. And these processes, of course, directly impact the function of our immune cells.
Right, it's all connected.
It is. Now, vitamin C, that's a powerful antioxidant that protects our cells from damage. And it also helps with the production and function of white blood cells. Those are immune warriors, right?
Our army.
Yes. And then the trace minerals like zinc, they're essential for the development and communication of immune cells. And selenium, that's another antioxidant that helps to protect those immune cells from harm.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to make sure we're getting enough of all these nutrients.
Absolutely.
The next supplement they talk about is omega-3. We hear a lot about omega-3s these days.
We do, and for good reason. Omega-3 fatty acids are essential for every single cell in our body, really. They're key components of our cell walls, including those of our immune cells. This makes sure our cells are flexible and can function the way they're supposed to.
That makes sense.
But the authors are very clear about choosing high-quality brands.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
You want to make sure you're getting a potent dose and good absorption. And also, you want to be mindful of the mercury content, especially with fish oil supplements. The book recommends going for supplements sourced from clean, deep ocean waters.
Okay, good to know. So omega-3s, they might not directly attack a virus, but they help build a stronger foundation for our cells overall, which indirectly supports immunity.
Exactly. It's about creating a healthy environment for our immune cells to thrive.
I like that. So next up, vitamin C. And the 21st Century Man suggests that many of us could benefit from some extra vitamin C, particularly when we're under stress. Why is that?
Well, it turns out stress can really deplete our vitamin C levels. And stress isn't just psychological, like work deadlines or traffic jams. It also includes physical stress, like what our body experiences when fighting off an infection.
Makes sense. Our body is working overtime in those situations.
Exactly. So if your immune system is busy battling a bug, or you're dealing with any other kind of stress, your body might need more vitamin C than usual to keep up.
So it's like a double whammy,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You're stressed, so your body needs more vitamin C, and at the same time, your body's using up more vitamin C to deal with that stress.
Right.
Okay. Moving on to vitamin D, also known as the sunshine vitamin. The book emphasizes that even though many multivitamins contain vitamin D, deficiencies are still very common. Why is that? And what should we do about it?
Well, a lot of factors can influence our vitamin D levels, like how much time we spend in the sun, our skin color, and even where we live. So just taking a multivitamin might not be enough. The book strongly recommends getting your vitamin D levels checked regularly with a blood test. That way you know for sure if you need to supplement and how much to take.
Right, because vitamin D plays a really important role in how our immune system responds to threats.
Absolutely. It helps to regulate the immune response and make sure it's functioning properly.
Got it. So we've talked about multivitamins, omega-3, vitamin C, and vitamin D. The last of these fundamental supplements is magnesium. And the 21st Century Man points out that modern lifestyles tend to deplete our magnesium levels. What's the connection between magnesium and immunity?
Well, magnesium is a busy mineral. It's involved in hundreds of processes in our body, everything from heart health to energy production to immune function. The problem is that the stresses of modern life, the constant go, 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 can really drain our magnesium reserves. And when our magnesium levels are low, our immune system can take a hit. Interestingly, the book mentions things like constipation and fatigue as potential signs of magnesium deficiency.
Really? Constipation?
Yeah, it just goes to show how interconnected everything is. Magnesium is a key player in so many different bodily functions, including those that support our immunity.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've covered the 5 fundamental supplements, the foundation, if you will. Now, the 21st Century Man really stresses the importance of food choices when it comes to immunity, right?
Oh, absolutely. It all starts with a quality diet. The book even refers you to other chapters that dive deeper into this, like the sections on food reactions and the immune system on sugar. It also points you to the chapters on carbs and food allergies.
So there's a lot more to learn about this in the book. But what's the gist? Why is food so crucial for immunity?
Well, certain foods can actually weaken our immune systems. Like too much sugar can make our white blood cells less effective at fighting off infections. And some foods can trigger inflammatory responses in our body, which puts an extra burden on our immune system.
So it's not just about eating enough of the good stuff, it's also about avoiding the stuff that might be harming our immune system.
Right. It's a two-pronged approach.
Makes sense. Now, what if you're doing all the right things, taking your supplements, eating a healthy diet, but your immune system still seems to need a little extra help? The chapter talks about some steps you can take.
Yes, it does. If you're someone who's always catching colds, or if you're struggling with chronic inflammation like arthritis or digestive problems, the book recommends talking to your doctor about getting your nutrient levels checked. Simple blood tests can tell you if you're deficient in any key nutrients, like vitamin D, for instance.
And if those tests reveal any deficiencies, you can address them with targeted supplementation.
Exactly.
The chapter also mentions seeking guidance from a health coach or nutritionist, especially for less severe issues.
Right. They can help you make those lifestyle and dietary changes that will best support your immune system. It's about getting personalized advice that's tailored to your specific needs.
Okay, so we've got our foundational supplements, we're focusing on a healthy diet, and we're getting personalized guidance if we need it. Now, the chapter also talks about immune cell levels, things like basophils, eosinophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, and neutrophils. For those of us who aren't medical professionals, can you break down what those are and why they're important?
Sure. Think of these different types of white blood cells as different branches of your immune army, each with a specific job to do. Neutrophils, for example, are often the first responders to a bacterial infection. Lymphocytes, which include T cells and B cells, they're the special forces, responsible for what we call adaptive immunity. That's the body's ability to remember past infections and mount a targeted attack if it encounters them again.
So, like our immune system has its own memory bank.
Exactly. And then eosinophils and basophils, they're involved in allergic reactions and fighting off parasites. Now, these cell levels are often included in a standard blood test, and if your doctor sees any unusual patterns, like very high or very low levels of certain cells, it can give them clues about what's going on with your immune system.
Got it. So it's worth paying attention to those numbers. Now, before we dive into specific health conditions, the chapter has a word of caution about supplements. What is it?
It's a simple but important point. The authors advise that you introduce any new supplement one at a time.
Good advice.
Yeah, that way you can monitor how your body reacts and see if it agrees with you. It's a way to avoid any potential negative reactions and make sure that you're really benefiting from the supplements you're taking.
Okay, makes perfect sense. Now let's get into some of the specific health conditions that are related to immune function. The chapter starts with autoimmunity, which is a big one.
It is. And it affects a lot of people. In essence, autoimmunity is when your immune system mistakenly attacks your own body's healthy cells, and tissues. It's like it can't tell the difference between friend and foe.
That's like an internal civil war going on.
Exactly. And the chapter lists a bunch of common autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, certain thyroid disorders, celiac disease, type 1 diabetes, and a few others.
Wow, that's a long list.
It is, and it highlights just how prevalent autoimmune diseases are. Now, the interesting thing is that the chapter also points to some underlying causes of autoimmune activity that you might not always hear about.
Oh, like what?
Well, for one, they talk about food-related issues, particularly eating too many carbs and sugar. They also mention consuming foods that you personally react to, even if they're not considered allergens in the traditional sense.
Right, food sensitivities.
Exactly. Then there's the issue of low-grade or chronic infections that can keep your immune system on high alert all the time. And they also bring up exposure to mold and environmental toxins as potential triggers.
So it's not just about genetics. Lifestyle and environmental factors can play a significant role.
Absolutely. And the good news is that there have been advancements in how we understand and manage autoimmune disorders. The book mentions that functional medicine practitioners are often very knowledgeable in this area. They focus on identifying and addressing those underlying causes, which can help to regulate the immune system and reduce those autoimmune attacks.
So it's about getting to the root of the problem, not just masking the symptoms.
Exactly. The chapter even recommends a cookbook, the Autoimmune Paleo Cookbook, which might be a helpful resource for people looking for dietary strategies to manage their condition.
Great. Okay, next up. The chapter explores a connection that I found really fascinating. The link between the immune system and what they call brain-associated symptoms. Things like brain fog, lack of focus, memory issues, even depression and anxiety.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, and it's a relatively new area of research. The book highlights the discovery that the brain actually has its own immune system with specialized cells called glial cells. And a particular type of glial cell called microglia are like the brain's own little immune soldiers. Their job is to protect the brain from threats.
So how do these microglia get involved in brain-related symptoms?
Well, in certain situations, like autoimmune disorders that affect the brain or head injuries or even neurological conditions like Parkinson's disease, these microglia can become overactive, leading to inflammation in the brain.
So it's like the brain's own immune system can sometimes backfire.
Right. And what's even more interesting is that immune activity elsewhere in the body can also trigger inflammation in the brain, and sometimes the brain has trouble regulating that inflammation effectively.
Wow, so it's a complex interplay between the immune system and the brain. But the good news is that the chapter lists some nutrients that might be able to calm down those overactive microglia.
They do. They mention glutathione, resveratrol, which is found in grape skins, curcumin from turmeric, and green tea extract. These are all powerful antioxidants that can help to protect brain cells and reduce inflammation.
Okay, so we can take concrete steps to support our brain health through nutrition.
Absolutely. The chapter also talks about something called brain fatigue, which is basically a feeling of mental exhaustion. They explain that this can happen when our brain is running low on the nutrients it needs to function properly, particularly certain amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. And since our brain is constantly using amino acids, a deficiency can definitely impact our mental energy and mood. The book even suggests some amino acid supplements that might be helpful in this situation.
Okay, so brain fog, fatigue, mood swings, these can all be linked back to the immune system and nutrient deficiencies. It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
It does.
The chapter also recommends a book called The Angel and the Assassin for anyone who wants to learn more about this fascinating brain-immune connection. Moving on, the chapter talks about cancer prevention, and it emphasizes the daily role of our immune system in this process.
Yes. Our immune system is constantly on patrol, looking for and destroying abnormal cells, including those that have the potential to become cancerous. There are specialized cells called natural killer cells, which are basically designed to kill those rogue cells before they can cause problems. It's like having an internal security force.
That's amazing. So our immune system is working hard every day to keep us cancer-free.
It is. But the chapter also lists a number of factors that can increase the risk of those cancerous cells developing in the first place.
Oh, like what?
Well, things like exposure to harmful chemicals, like from smoking, certain viral infections, chronic inflammation, repeated injuries to tissues, genetic predispositions, and poor dietary choices, especially a diet that's high in carbs. They also mention oxidative stress, which is kind of like rust building up on our cells.
And I remember the chapter compares oxidative stress to rust. which is a great analogy. It makes it easy to understand.
Right, and it explains that getting plenty of antioxidants from fresh fruits and vegetables can help to counter that rust.
Okay, so a healthy diet is key here too. The chapter also recommends a book called Anti-Cancer, A New Way of Life by Dr. David Servin Schreiber, which sounds like a valuable resource for anyone wanting to delve deeper into this topic. Now, let's move on to a more common experience, colds and flu. The chapter talks about both prevention and support.
Yes. It starts by reminding us about the importance of those foundational supplements we talked about earlier. A quality multivitamin, omega-3s, vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium, all of these help to build a strong immune system that's better equipped to resist those nasty viruses. They also mention medicinal mushrooms, which contain compounds called beta-glucans that can be helpful during cold and flu season.
Okay, and what about when we're already sick? What does the book recommend for support during an active infection?
Well, in addition to those basics, they mention vitamin D, a combination of monolaurin and echinacea, colloidal or nanosilver, elderberry syrup, and zinc lozenges. But they do caution against taking more than 150 milligrams of zinc per day. The idea here is to give your immune system that extra boost it needs to fight off the virus.
These are all remedies we've heard about, but it's helpful to see them all laid out in the context of immune support. Okay, moving on to digestive issues. The chapter really emphasizes the connection between gut health and immunity, which we're hearing so much about these days.
We are, and the 21st Century Man does a great job of explaining why this connection is so important. Did you know that up to 80% of our immune system actually resides in our gut? It's constantly monitoring everything we eat, making sure that no harmful bacteria or other pathogens slip through the cracks.
Wow, 80%. That's incredible. So what are some of the protective mechanisms we have in our gut?
Well, first off, there's stomach acid, which is designed to kill off a lot of those harmful bacteria that might come in with our food. The authors actually caution against the overuse of antacids because they can interfere with this important defense mechanism.
Interesting. So popping antacids all the time might not be the best idea.
Right. Then there's the gut immune system itself, which is constantly differentiating between beneficial bacteria, the probiotics, and the harmful microbes. And if a harmful microbe does manage to get through, there are antibodies that act like shrapnel, coating the invader and helping it get trapped in the mucus lining of the gut so it can be eliminated. It's a pretty sophisticated system.
It is. The chapter also uses the term dysbiosis when talking about gut health. What does that mean?
Dysbiosis basically means an imbalance in the types and amounts of microorganisms that live in our gut. For example, an overgrowth of certain bacteria like C. difficile can happen after taking antibiotics, which can really disrupt the gut flora. And a diet high in sugar can lead to the development of bacterial biofilm, which is basically a sticky mass of bacteria that can cause problems. Both of these situations can negatively impact our health and our immune system.
So maintaining a healthy balance of gut bacteria is crucial. The book talks about the benefits of probiotics and fermented foods.
Yes, and while probiotics can be helpful, the authors emphasize that they're not a substitute for a healthy diet. They recommend incorporating a variety of fermented foods into our diet, things like yogurt, kefir, miso, tempeh, pickles, sauerkraut, kimchi, even sourdough bread. These foods naturally introduce beneficial bacteria into our gut.
I love fermented foods. They're so good for you. The chapter even suggests a little experiment, cutting out grains and milk for 2 weeks to see if you notice any improvements. This can help you identify potential food sensitivities that might be messing with your gut health.
It's a good idea. The book also recommends a book called Optimal Digestive Health if you want to dive deeper into this topic. But the main takeaway here is that a healthy gut is a cornerstone of a strong immune system.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, the chapter also briefly touches on fatigue, which we all experience from time to time.
Right. And it explains that intense fatigue we feel when we have a cold or the flu, that's actually a direct result of our immune system working hard to fight off the virus. Our body is diverting a lot of energy to the immune response, which can leave us feeling drained. However, the book points out that if you experience chronic fatigue, meaning it lasts for more than 2 weeks, you should definitely consult with your doctor to rule out any underlying medical conditions.
Good advice. Now, we've touched on food reactions before, but the chapter have a whole section dedicated to explaining why they're so important for immunity.
Yes, and this section really gets into the nitty-gritty of how food reactions can disrupt our immune system. They can trigger all sorts of seemingly unrelated symptoms, from mood swings to brain fog. The main mechanism they describe is what's often called leaky gut syndrome or increased intestinal permeability.
Leaky gut. We've all heard that term, but what exactly does it mean?
So imagine the lining of your intestines as this tightly woven barrier that's supposed to let tiny nutrient particles pass through into your bloodstream, but keep larger particles like undigested food or bacteria contained within the gut. Now, in leaky gut, this barrier becomes more porous, allowing those larger particles to leak through into the bloodstream.
Well, that doesn't sound good.
It's not ideal. And when those foreign particles enter the bloodstream, it triggers an immune response, which can lead to inflammation throughout the body. It also puts a strain on your liver, which has to work harder to detoxify those substances.
So leaky gut can really wreak havoc on your system.
It can. And the symptoms can be all over the map, from fatigue and brain fog to skin problems, joint pain, and digestive issues.
Wow, it's amazing how many different symptoms can be linked back to leaky gut. The chapter does a great job of explaining this complex issue. Okay, let's move on to another important topic, the immune system on sugar.
This is a big one. The book is very clear about the negative impact of sugar on our immune system. Basically, sugar and other simple carbohydrates are what they call empty calories. They give us energy, but they lack the essential vitamins and minerals that our body needs to function properly. And this lack of nutrients can actually impair the function of our white blood cells, making them less effective at fighting off infections.
So sugar is not only bad for our waistline, it's also bad for our immune system.
Right. It's like giving our immune soldiers faulty weapons. The chapter even mentions that consuming sugar can actually lower your white blood cell count and make those cells less efficient at attacking microbes. They call this having lazy leukocytes, which I think is a great way to describe it.
Lazy leukocytes. I love that. And the scary thing is that this negative impact on our immune system might not even show up on standard blood tests.
That's right. Your white blood cell count might look normal, but their ability to do their job might be compromised. So the book recommends substituting sugary foods with lower glycemic index options like berries and vegetables. They even share a story about someone who significantly reduced their frequency of colds just by cutting back on carbs.
That's encouraging. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, but there's still more. The chapter talks about something called infection, low grade.
Right, and this is something that a lot of people might not even be aware of. The book explains that stressful lifestyles and aging can make us more susceptible to these sneaky infections that can linger in our body without causing obvious symptoms. Things like viruses, certain bacteria, even yeast overgrowth. And these low-grade infections can be contributing to all sorts of health problems, from heart disease to cancer to autoimmune disorders, even dementia.
Wow, that's sobering. So it's important to be aware of these hidden infections and take steps to support our immune system.
Absolutely. And speaking of supporting our immune system, the chapter also talks about inflammation. We hear a lot about inflammation these days.
We do, but there's good inflammation and bad inflammation.
Right. And the chapter here is focusing on chronic inflammation, the kind that's constantly simmering in the background and can contribute to all sorts of serious health problems like heart disease, cancer, dementia, joint disease, even COPD. And they list a number of culprits that can trigger this chronic inflammation, things like food sensitivities, those blood sugar spikes from eating too many carbs, low-grade infections, exposure to toxins, and obesity.
So chronic inflammation is something we definitely want to address. And speaking of obesity, the chapter has a whole section on inflammation due to obesity. What's the connection there?
Well, the book explains that fat cells themselves are a source of inflammation. This is partly due to insulin resistance, which often develops from a diet high in simple carbs. As our body moves towards prediabetes and potentially type 2 diabetes, it shifts into a state of chronic inflammation. And to make matters worse, fat cells actually produce their own inflammatory compounds, adding fuel to the fire.
So it's like a vicious cycle. The more fat cells we have, the more inflammation we have, and the more inflammation we have, the harder it is to lose weight.
Exactly. And the chapter also mentions that fat cells produce estrogens, which can lower testosterone levels in men, creating a hormonal imbalance that further contributes to the problem. So the book recommends focusing on reducing insulin resistance by lowering carb intake, managing leaky gut, and supporting detoxification pathways. They even recommend a book called The Blood Sugar Solution 10-Day Detox Diet by Dr. Mark Hyman, which might be a helpful resource.
Okay, so lots of great tips there for addressing inflammation related to obesity. The chapter then shifts gears to talk about skin and how the immune system is involved in skin health.
Right. For those minor skin issues we all get, like cuts, scrapes, burns, the book lists a number of nutrients that support healing, like B vitamins, vitamins A and D, silica, and zinc. They also mention topical treatments like aloe vera and calendula. Interestingly, they say that if minor wounds are healing slowly, it could be a sign that you need to increase your intake of vitamins A and D and zinc. And for more serious skin conditions like acne, eczema, or psoriasis, they recommend identifying underlying causes, which often involves cutting out sugar, grains, and dairy for a couple of weeks to see if there's any improvement.
So it's a good idea to pay attention to those little signs our body is giving us. And if those dietary changes don't help, then it's time to seek professional guidance.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about stress, which is a big one for most of us. The chapter explains how high levels of stress can really deplete our immune system.
It does, and it talks about the role of our stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. These are hormones that are designed to help us cope with stress in the short term. But when we're chronically stressed, these hormone levels can get out of whack, which can suppress our immune system. The chapter doesn't really go into specific stress management techniques, but it acknowledges that there's a ton of information out there on this topic. The main takeaway is that managing stress is crucial for maintaining a healthy immune system.
Absolutely. Now, the final section of the chapter is about rebuilding immunity, which is what we all need to do after our immune system has been challenged by an infection or other stressors.
Right. And the book emphasizes that the first priority is to properly identify and treat the underlying cause of the problem, whether it's an infection, a nutrient deficiency, or something else. Alongside that, they stress the importance of restoring good nutrition. This might involve increasing protein intake, supplementing with key nutrients like zinc, and addressing any specific deficiencies that have been identified through testing. They even mention the possibility of checking specific markers of immune function and using targeted supplements based on those findings. And for aging men, they highlight the importance of checking and replenishing hormone levels like testosterone and DHEA.
So it's a multi-pronged approach, addressing the root cause, replenishing nutrients, and supporting hormone balance.
Exactly. It's about giving your body the tools it needs to rebuild and recover.
Makes sense. And lastly, the chapter wraps up with a brief explanation of vaccines.
It does, and it describes vaccines as a way of triggering what's called active immunization. Basically, vaccines introduce a weakened or inactive form of a pathogen into our body, which stimulates our immune system to produce antibodies against that specific pathogen. This creates a memory in our immune system so that if we encounter the real pathogen in the future, our body is ready to fight it off.
So it's like giving our immune system a practice run.
Exactly. And the book points out that some vaccines provide lifelong immunity, while others, like the flu vaccine, need to be updated annually because viruses can mutate and change over time.
Okay, so that was a whirlwind tour of Chapter 21. We covered a lot of ground, but this chapter in the 21st Century Man is packed with so much valuable information about boosting your immunity. We highly recommend checking out the book for a deeper dive into all these topics. It's a fantastic resource for taking control of your health and supporting your immune system.
Absolutely. It really empowers you to make informed decisions about your health, and it's written in a very accessible way, so it's easy to understand even if you're not a medical professional.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what were some of the key takeaways that stood out to you? I was personally really struck by the connection between gut health and immunity.
Me too. And the impact of sugar on our white blood cells was pretty eye-opening. It's amazing how something as simple as cutting back on sugar can make such a difference for our immune system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as you're listening to this, we encourage you to think about some small changes you can make in your own life to support your immune system. Whether it's incorporating more fermented foods into your diet, getting your vitamin D levels checked, or simply managing your stress levels, every little bit helps.
It does. And remember, your immune system is constantly working hard to protect you. By giving it the support it needs, you're investing in your long-term health and well-being.
Well said. And with that, we'll wrap up this episode of the 21st Century Man podcast. We hope you found this deep dive into Chapter 21 helpful and informative.
Be sure to join us next time as we explore Chapter 22, which focuses on reducing the risks of disability.
Until then, take care of yourselves and keep those immune systems strong.
We'll see you next time.